This food is a total scam. It's not authentic at all. Lachlan Finch's voice cut across the Golden Palace, arrogant and loud enough for every banker and socialite to hear. Phones lifted. Whispers spread like wildfire. Aisha, calm and unshaken, looked down at the crumpled, forged receipt he had slapped onto the table, covering her legitimate invoice. "I simply delivered your order, sir," she said softly. His sneer was venomous. "There are better places to work, sweetheart. Places where waitresses don't try to cheat customers." "That's not what it says on the real bill," he replied, condescension and venom in the same breath. The room went quiet. A few diners shifted nervously, unsure if they should intervene. Aisha didn't move. She didn't speak English. She just replied in perfect, flawless Mandarin, a complex rebuke that was instantly humiliating. Finally, as he stood to leave, furious, he didn't realize Aisha had seen the photo flashing on his phone screen, a picture of a young girl with her own, unmistakable eyes. By the time he stepped out the front door, oblivious to the storm he had unleashed, Aisha knew two things: the man who ruined her mother was her father, and everything about his $50 million empire was already set to change. Before we continue, comment down where in the world you are watching from. Aisha was 24, navigating a world that felt determined to underestimate her. She worked as a waitress at the Golden Palace, a high-end Chinese restaurant in downtown Seattle, saving every dollar to finish her degree. Her heritage was a beautiful, complicated mix, and she spoke fluent Mandarin, a language she had fiercely taught herself as a way to connect with the culture of her mother's estranged family. It was her secret weapon, usually hidden behind the polite, neutral smile required in the service industry. This particular Tuesday felt heavy, the kind of day where the air was thick with the weight of expectation and exhaustion. The restaurant was usually a quiet oasis of sophistication, but the calm was about to be violently shattered. A wave of loud, self-important chatter swept through the dining room as Lachlan Finch entered. He was the kind of tech CEO whose name was always in the headlines: chiseled jaw, custom-tailored suit, and an aura of entitlement that was suffocating. He was flanked by two nervous-looking executives and immediately began making demanding, theatrical gestures. Lachlan loudly dismissed the menu's authentic offerings, making a mockery of the respectful quiet of the place. When he ordered, he spoke in a deliberately slow, condescending way, mixing heavily accented, broken Chinese with English, clearly aiming to intimidate the staff. When his food arrived, he pushed the plate away dramatically. "This is a joke," he announced, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "It's not authentic at all. It's a total scam." His eyes fixed on Aisha as she approached his table, ready to deliver a polite apology. He started listing the ways the dish supposedly failed, his critique laced with an ugly, racialized assumption about her competence. His voice was a low snarl as he pointedly dismissed her. "Sweetheart, you wouldn't understand the nuances of real Chinese cuisine. Go fetch me the manager." Aisha took a steadying breath, the simple smile dropping from her face. She looked him directly in the eye, her posture ramrod straight, and replied in perfect, rapid-fire Mandarin, using an idiom so specialized it was a clear rebuke of his ignorance. The noise in the CEO's throat caught, the arrogance freezing into pure shock. His executives went completely still. Lachlan, though stunned, quickly regained his composure, a cold, hard anger replacing the surprise. He knew he'd been bested, and he didn't like it. He reached for his wallet, his hand trembling slightly with contained fury. "Fine. You're clever, I'll give you that," he hissed, tossing a stack of bills onto the table. He then slapped a folded receipt down on top of the money. "But your cleverness doesn't change the fact that you overcharged me. That's not what it says on this slip." The slip was clearly forged, a crumpled receipt from a cheaper, rival establishment. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." Your career here is over. He stood up, making sure everyone saw the threat. But as he stood, the screen of his phone, lying face up on the table, flashed with a notification, showing a close-up picture of a young girl with an unmistakable, familiar set of eyes. Aisha stared at the photo, her heart suddenly pounding a different rhythm. She knew that girl. And as Lachlan swept out, she discreetly snapped a photo of his screen, the forged receipt now feeling like a clue, not a crime. The noise of Lachlan's storming exit still echoed in the upscale room. Aisha's manager, a man named Mr. Chen who always feared confrontation, rushed over, his face pale with anxiety. What did you do, Aisha? That was Lachlan Finch. He said you were trying to scam him with a receipt. Mr. Chen was ready to capitulate, already pulling out his phone, likely preparing to terminate her to save his restaurant's reputation. Aisha felt the familiar squeeze of panic, the thought of losing her job and school money paralyzing her for a brief second. She knew the power a man like Lachlan held, a single word from him could destroy everything she was working for. But then she remembered the girl's face on his phone screen. She straightened up, feeling the hot flush of indignation give way to cold, hard resolve. She picked up the forged slip and compared it to the restaurant's actual invoice. The differences were amateurish but clearly designed to create maximum plausible deniability for him. She held up the receipts and then quickly showed Mr. Chen the photo she'd secretly taken, the close-up of the young girl on Lachlan's phone. Sir, he brought a fake receipt with him. Look closer, Aisha urged, her voice low and steady. He was looking for a fight. He wants to hurt this restaurant. I didn't scam him, he was trying to ruin me. Mr. Chen hesitated, rubbing his temples, but the combination of the obvious forgery and Aisha's calm defense of the restaurant's reputation was enough. He warned her to stay far away from Finch's name and walked away, choosing fear over justice. Aisha felt a rush of adrenaline. She had faced down a bully and won a tiny battle, but the war felt much bigger now. The brief image of the girl on Lachlan's screen sparked an old, deep ache. She thought of her own life, of the years spent piecing together a future alone, her Mandarin studies a quiet promise to a family she never knew. Her mother, Naomi, had left her when she was young, choosing a life of silence and distance that Aisha had never understood. The only thing she knew was that her mother had an immense secret about her father. She just never knew how big or how dark it was. The thought of confronting Naomi now, armed with the image of Lachlan Finch, was overwhelming. Before she could even finish her shift, her phone buzzed with an incoming call, an unfamiliar number. She answered it warily. It was Naomi. Her mother's voice was frantic, choked with tears, unlike the controlled tone Aisha was used to. Aisha, you need to hear this from me. Before you see him again. I'm so sorry, baby. Her mother rambled, then choked out the names, Lachlan. The scandal. The money. Lachlan Finch is your father, Aisha. And the $50 million scam you're about to read about in the news? It's all connected to the reason I left. We need to meet now. The entire restaurant faded away as the line disconnected, leaving Aisha standing motionless, the cold, hard weight of a billionaire's betrayal settling over her heart. The late afternoon light in the city park was a sickly yellow, doing little to ease the tension between Aisha and Naomi. Naomi looked older, wearier, a woman drowning in secrets. Aisha sat across from her on a weathered bench, the two-word declaration of the previous night, your father, echoing like a gunshot. I don't understand, Mom, Aisha whispered, the simple English sounding hollow. Lachlan Finch? The tech mogul? How is he my father? And what does he have to do with $50 million? Her heart was simultaneously breaking for the lie and hardening against the man. Naomi took a shuddering breath and the confession poured out, a torrent of long-suppressed pain. She was only 21, a brilliant, hopeful intern at Lachlan's company, Zenith Tech, years ago. He was already a rising star, manipulative and charming. He promised her the world, then took advantage of her trust and her vulnerability. When she realized she was pregnant, she tried to tell him, but by then, Lachlan was already sinking his claws into a major corporate acquisition, needing absolute silence and no distractions. Naomi's family, who had considerable influence in the tech community, prepared to fight him, not just for Naomi, but because they had discovered irregularities in his financial dealings. This was where the $50 million came in, the real, ugly core of the story. Lachlan didn't just acquire a company, he secretly raided its employee pension fund before the merger was finalized, diverting that money into his own network of shell corporations. When Naomi's family discovered his actions and threatened to expose him, Lachlan used a fraction of the stolen pension money, the people's savings, their retirement hopes, to buy their silence and ruin. He paid Naomi a huge sum, not out of love or responsibility, but as a transaction for her silence and permanent disappearance, ensuring she'd never name him as the father. Naomi, heartbroken and terrified, accepted the money, a tainted fortune meant to guarantee Aisha a life free of struggle. The money was gone now, long spent trying to keep the secret hidden and paying off her family's debts. The real tragedy, Naomi confessed, was that Lachlan had not just betrayed her, but had stolen the futures of thousands of his own dedicated employees. It was a betrayal so cold, so deep, that it eclipsed the personal heartbreak. The man Aisha had just stood up to was not just a cheating father, he was a thief who stole from the old and the vulnerable to secure his own monstrous wealth and power. Naomi finally pointed at Aisha's phone, at the photo Aisha had taken of the girl on Lachlan's screen. That's Serena, his adopted daughter. She's the face of his charity now, the one who benefits from all the money that should have been yours. The life she's living is built on the ruins of the pension funds that Lachlan stole. A cold, hard knot formed in Aisha's stomach. The truth was worse than any fictional drama. She had a half-sister, Serena, who was living a life of privilege built on the misery of thousands of ruined families. The picture of the innocent-looking girl, bathed in the glow of Lachlan's phone screen, now felt like a taunt. This wasn't just about an absentee father, this was about justice for the forgotten. Aisha sat alone for hours, the conflict raging inside her. The money wasn't the point, it was the betrayal of trust on such a massive scale. To walk away now would be to condone the destruction of the countless lives who had lost their retirement savings. The path of revenge, however, felt dark and uncertain. Lachlan was too powerful, too well-connected. She had only 2 forged receipts and a blurry photo of a girl. She needed more than just anger, she needed an undeniable weapon. The thought of trying to tackle this alone was foolish. Her mother, Naomi, was too fearful and heartbroken to fight. Aisha realized she needed an accomplice, someone who had seen Lachlan's deception firsthand and had the technical knowledge to navigate his defenses. She remembered a name her grandfather, now deceased and ruined by the fallout, used to mention with reverence and sadness. His name was Jen. He was the former senior software engineer at Lachlan's acquired company, a genius whose own pension fund, his entire life savings, was among the first things Lachlan had seized. Naomi had mentioned that Jen had tried to fight back for years before disappearing into quiet, anonymous retirement. If anyone knew where Lachlan buried the bodies, it would be Jen. Aisha used the old, cryptic notes her mother had kept and cross-referenced public records. It took her the better part of a day, but she finally tracked him down to a remote, sun-faded town in rural Pennsylvania. She drove straight there, finding Jen in a small, run-down garage, repairing old computers. He was cautious, guarded, his eyes reflecting years of bitter defeat. When Aisha told him her name and why she was there, he shut down instantly, demanding she leave. Lachlan Finch is a ghost, child. You can't fight a ghost. He took everything, even my courage. Aisha pressed him, telling him the story of her mother, of the forged receipt, of the girl named Serena, and the massive injustice of it all. As she spoke, the cold defeat in his eyes flickered, replaced by a spark of pure, unadulterated rage. He finally agreed, but his conditions were absolute. I want him ruined. I want him to know what it feels like to lose everything he built. And I know how to do it. He gestured to a dusty, locked server tucked away in the back of the room. This holds the proof. But the records are in a complex Chinese code, a financial cipher only 2 people in the world can read. And one of them is you, my daughter. Jian's garage transformed overnight from a repair shop into a war room. Aisha was immediately thrust into a rigorous training regimen. The less extreme event of the chapter was the intense, almost monastic dedication to learning the Chinese financial cipher. Jian was a patient but demanding instructor. He taught her not just the language of the code, but the twisted architecture of Lachlan's betrayal, the shell corporations, the offshore accounts, the paper trails that seemed to disappear into thin air. Aisha's fluency in Mandarin was the key, allowing her to understand the ancient, subtle ways the code was disguised. Jian's grief over his lost pension fueled their work. He shared stories of Aisha's grandfather, a man of profound honor who would never have countenanced such treachery. Through Jian, Aisha began to feel a connection to the family she never knew, a lineage of integrity that Lachlan had tried to erase. The 2 of them developed a surrogate father-daughter bond, their shared mission dissolving the years of distance and sorrow. They worked through the nights, navigating layers of digital protection, the air thick with the smell of old electronics and the tension of their mission. They were getting closer, the complex, nested files slowly yielding their secrets. They discovered the full extent of the operation. Lachlan didn't just raid one fund, he used the initial $50 million as a seed to finance a cascade of smaller, equally devastating scams. They found clear evidence of tax fraud and market manipulation, all protected by a final, seemingly impenetrable firewall. It was the last, desperate layer of protection Lachlan had built. Jian worked his magic, exploiting a tiny, forgotten flaw in the company's original security system. The screen glowed white as the final firewall began to crumble. "We're in," Jian whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. The core server was now accessible. But before they could download the vast trove of incriminating documents, a small, blinking red icon appeared in the corner of the screen. The text was in English, stark and terrifying: "Intrusion detected. Security protocol initiating. Server wipe scheduled, 48:00. Lachlan's security team was aware. He knew someone was after him, and he was taking no chances. Aisha and Jian looked at each other, the reality of their danger slamming into them. They had bypassed the defenses, but now they were in a race against the clock. They had 48 hours before the server was wiped clean, taking every single piece of evidence with it. The red clock in the corner of the dusty monitor seemed to scream the countdown: 48:00. 48 hours until Lachlan Finch's system wiped the server clean, destroying every piece of evidence of the $50 million scam and the pensions he ruined. The panic was immediate, but Jian was a man galvanized by a lifetime of hurt. He barked instructions, his movements surprisingly quick for a man his age, grabbing hard drives and setting up mirrored backups. He and Aisha were in a frantic race against the clock, fueled by strong, bitter coffee and the shared memory of betrayal. Every line of code they decrypted, every document they managed to pull, felt like a small, desperate victory against a giant. A less extreme event happened in the quiet moments between data transfers. Aisha slumped, the stress making her doubt everything. "Is this worth it, Jian? Even if we get the data, he's so powerful. We'll just end up destroyed, too." Jian didn't look up from his screen. He spoke of her grandfather, a kind, brilliant man whose life was reduced to rubble by Lachlan's greed. He reminded Aisha that this wasn't revenge, it was the sacred, exhausting fight for justice, for the thousands who had no voice. Their bond deepened here, built on the foundations of a family Lachlan had tried to erase. Jian became the stern, protective figure Aisha had always missed, his loyalty fierce and unwavering. As the clock ticked below 36 hours, Jian managed to crack the final layer of encryption, a complicated blend of old-school tech and modern AI protection. The system folded. A massive folder, labeled "The Vault," popped open on the screen, ready for download. They cheered, a quick, exhausted, mutual moment of triumph. But as they started the massive download, a separate, small file caught Aisha's eye. It wasn't encrypted financial data. It was a folder marked "Serena, My Thoughts." Inside, they found a series of heartfelt, desperate letters from Lachlan to his adopted daughter, Serena. They were filled with confessions of deep fear, regret about his life choices, and the desperate vulnerability of a father terrified of losing the one person who still saw him as good. The thief was human after all, but the discovery was shocking. Aisha stared at the screen, reading the CEO's private thoughts. "I built this empire for you, Serena, but now I'm terrified it's nothing but sand. If you ever knew the truth, the man who publicly humiliated her was a trembling father in private." This extreme emotional contrast hit Aisha hard. How could someone capable of such raw, tender love for one child be responsible for destroying the lives of countless others, including his own flesh and blood daughter, Aisha? This moral crossroads was deeply painful. Was her purpose to expose the monster, or to save his innocent daughter from his toxic legacy? She took the files to her mother, Naomi, who read a single paragraph and shoved the laptop away in disgust. "Don't you dare pity him, Aisha. That is manipulation. He is using that girl's innocence as his shield. He deserves no softness, only exposure." Naomi's bitterness was a stark reflection of Aisha's own pain. But Aisha couldn't shake the image of Serena's innocent face, the girl from Lachlan's phone screen. She debated how to proceed. Public shaming felt necessary for the sake of the pension victims, but the letters revealed a path to possibly hurting Serena, too. The weight of that decision was crushing. They worked for another exhausting 12 hours, pulling data, cross-referencing names, and identifying the key players in the corporate fraud. The server was nearly empty, the critical documents safely mirrored. They were about to shut down when the warning flared up again, more urgent this time. The system wasn't just planning a wipe, it had successfully traced their static IP address and the connection was being triangulated. Jian cursed under his breath, realizing they'd spent too long on the emotional distraction of the letters. He sent a strike team. "We have minutes, maybe less." Aisha grabbed the portable hard drives containing the precious data. Jian frantically ripped crucial components from the old computers, making sure nothing of value was left to be analyzed. They scrambled out the back door of the garage just as the screech of tires announced the arrival of the security team's black SUVs. The door was kicked in moments later. Jian and Aisha watched from the relative cover of a dark alley as a flood of agents in tactical gear swarmed the building, their equipment now fully compromised and left behind. They were officially fugitives, and their lives just got a lot more complicated. The escape was a heart-pounding blur. They managed to lose the security team by slipping into a crowded, late-night industrial market, disappearing into the noise and shadows. Now, they were running silent, moving from safe house to safe house, using burner phones. The extreme event had pushed them into a deep, desperate corner. They had the data, but no secure way to process it or leak it. Lachlan knew their general location and was tightening the net. They had to assume every line of communication was compromised. Meanwhile, back at Zenith Tech headquarters, Cassandra was leading the manhunt. A young, brilliant security analyst, Cassandra was outwardly loyal, but inside, a quiet fire burned. The less extreme event of the chapter revealed her past. She was a first-generation success story, working tirelessly to support her parents, only to watch their modest retirement vanish years earlier in a different, but equally brutal, corporate scam. She had taken the job at Zenith to understand the monster from the inside, hoping one day to stop the next Lachlan Finch. She admired Aisha's brazenness and felt a sickening familiarity with the kind of financial betrayal Lachlan perpetrated. Cassandra was tasked with sifting through the remains of the IP trace and the destroyed equipment left in Jian's garage. She knew this was a high-stakes moment, her chance to either capture the opposition or join them. As she analyzed the remnants of the failed connection, she found an anomaly, a deliberate, tiny digital signature Jian had embedded in the final connection attempt, a calling card from his old company. It wasn't a malicious hack. It was a specific sequence of numbers known only to the original, betrayed employees. It was a cry for help. A realization hit Cassandra with the force of a punch. The person Lachlan wanted captured wasn't a corporate rival, they were one of his victims. They were fighting the same fight she was. She quickly encrypted her personal laptop and began composing a message. Using a secure, anonymous connection, she sent a single, coded message containing a fragment of the sequence Jian had left. She knew if they answered, they were allies. If they didn't, she'd lose her chance. She also included a piece of explosive, unverified information she'd stumbled upon during her daily audits. Lachlan wasn't just covering up the old scam, he was prepping a brand new one. The encrypted message landed on Aisha's burner phone, a random jumble of characters that only made sense when cross-referenced with Jian's old security notes. The code was the exact inverse of the signature Jian had left behind, a perfect match. Jian recognized it immediately, but Aisha was skeptical. It's a trap, Jian. She works for him. This is Lachlan playing games. The immediate extreme event was the high-stakes risk of trusting a complete stranger on the enemy's payroll. Jian convinced her. Lachlan is too arrogant for games like this. This is an olive branch from someone who knows our pain. They replied with a single confirmation word. Cassandra responded instantly, explaining her background in simple, straightforward language. The less extreme event was the slow, tentative process of building trust. Cassandra detailed her plan. She would continue to feed Lachlan's team false leads and misleading data about their compromised servers, ensuring Aisha and Jian had time to finalize their evidence. She admitted the risk was terrifying, but the scale of Lachlan's deceit had finally pushed her past the point of return. Cassandra proved her loyalty instantly. She sent Aisha a secure internal memo detailing Lachlan's immediate schedule. He wasn't focused on the past, he was focused on the future. The memo outlined the upcoming launch of the Serena Finch Foundation, a large, public-facing charity initiative. Cassandra revealed the shocking, extreme event: the foundation was a front. Lachlan wasn't doing good. He was using the foundation's complex structure and global visibility to launder the remaining stolen pension money through a chain of seemingly legitimate, but entirely fake, non-profit organizations. This confirmed Aisha's worst fear: Lachlan was doubling down. He was using the name of his adopted daughter, the innocent girl whose face had haunted Aisha, as the face of his continued criminal enterprise. Cassandra included a warning. The foundation's first major public donation was scheduled for a massive gala in 3 days, and the source of the donation was an undisclosed investment fund that Cassandra believed contained the last of the $50 million. They had 3 days to stop a new, multi-million-dollar fraud, or the evidence they worked so hard to recover would become useless. Lachlan Finch, the picture of polished philanthropy, was on every major business channel, announcing the launch of his new charity, the Serena Finch Foundation. His voice was smooth, his eyes teary as he spoke of giving back and securing a better future for children. It was the ultimate public deception, the extreme event of the hour, a polished, corporate villain using genuine kindness to mask monstrous greed. Aisha watched him on a tiny screen in a rundown motel room, her rage barely contained. A less extreme event involved the tedious, exhausting process of sifting through the new financial data Cassandra was leaking to them. Aisha and Jian meticulously cross-referenced Lachlan's public press releases with the private wire transfers Cassandra provided. They discovered that the foundation was simply a shell company, a complex web of legal agreements designed to clean money. The money would flow from the undisclosed fund, through the charity, and straight back into Lachlan's private pockets, tax-free. They needed physical proof of the fake nonprofits to make the case stick. The plan was simple but terrifying: expose him at the foundation's highly televised gala. They had the digital evidence, the letters, and Cassandra's inside knowledge. But they still needed one final, undeniable piece of physical proof, something only an insider could access. Cassandra couldn't risk it, she was already under intense surveillance. The desperation was mounting, the time running out. Then, fate intervened. Aisha went to a small, local library to print out some of the initial audit documents. As she was waiting by the printer, a young woman walked past her, holding a stack of flyers for the upcoming foundation gala. It was Serena Finch. The innocent girl from the phone screen, now a beautiful young woman. They bumped shoulders, and Serena apologized, her smile genuine and warm. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm running around like crazy getting ready for my dad's gala. I volunteer at the main nonprofit he's honoring, so I'm in charge of all the paperwork." She laughed, unaware of the profound weight of her words. She was an unwitting inside agent, and she held the key to the final piece of evidence they needed. Aisha knew she had to talk to her, risking everything to get the crucial documents. She didn't know how she could involve this innocent girl in her father's downfall, but she had to try. What will Aisha do to get the paperwork without revealing her true identity? Lachlan Finch was everywhere. His face, usually set in a severe, arrogant mask, was now soft and paternal on every major news network. He spoke passionately about the Serena Finch Foundation, presenting it as his great personal calling. The less extreme event of the hour was Aisha and Jian sitting in their dusty motel room, forced to endure this public relations spectacle while meticulously tracking the stolen money. Cassandra, using her position as the mole, was funneling encrypted data packets about the foundation's structure. Lachlan was portraying himself as a modern-day saint, but Cassandra's data painted a picture of pure, cynical greed. They quickly pieced together the new scam. The foundation was a beautiful, shiny front, but the non-profit organizations it was set up to benefit were completely fake. The whole operation was a sophisticated network designed solely to wash the huge sums of cash Lachlan had previously tucked away. Lachlan was using his adopted daughter's name, Serena, as the clean, innocent face of his laundering scheme. This level of manipulation was so cold it made Aisha gasp. It wasn't enough for him to steal, he had to use goodness itself as his weapon. Aisha felt the weight of her earlier moral struggle lift, replaced by righteous fury. There could be no pity for a man who uses charity to commit crimes. The data Cassandra sent them was a detailed financial flow chart. It showed money moving from a source called the Undisclosed Investment Fund, through the foundation and into several shell corporations, ultimately controlled by Lachlan. The purpose was to turn the ill-gotten gains from the pension scam into legitimate, tax-free income. The extreme event hit when Jian traced the Undisclosed Investment Fund. It wasn't a general fund, it was the final, hidden repository of the $50 million he had stolen years ago. The first major public donation Lachlan was making to the foundation, the one he'd announce at the upcoming gala, was simply his own stolen money making a round trip back to him, freshly laundered and celebrated. This meant the gala was not just a public event, it was the final, irreversible step in cleaning the original crime. They had to stop the donation, or the money would vanish forever. The countdown to the gala was on, and the urgency was frantic. Lachlan's scam was hours away from completion. Aisha found herself facing another moral dilemma, the less extreme event of the chapter. She needed to approach Serena, the innocent girl who was the public face of the deception. Aisha knew she couldn't just hack Serena's life, she needed to understand the human cost of her actions. So, she sought Serena out at a local art gallery where she was volunteering. Serena was bright, effusive, and genuinely kind, talking enthusiastically about her father's generosity. "He's the best, truly," Serena said, handing Aisha a brochure for the foundation. "He's always wanted to make a real difference, you know. He just has such a good heart." Serena's words were a knife in Aisha's heart. How could this gentle young woman believe in a father who was a complete monster? The emotional contrast was agonizing. Aisha, forced to adopt a false persona, asked leading questions about the foundation's operations. Serena, trusting and open, shared everything, believing she was talking to a fellow admirer of her father. Serena pulled out a binder stuffed with papers. "I have to organize all these donor lists and partnership agreements before the gala tomorrow. My dad trusts me with all the administrative stuff for the nonprofits he's honoring. It's a lot of work, but totally worth it." She sighed happily, completely unaware that the partnership agreements were proof of the money laundering shells. Aisha's mind raced. The physical documents in that binder were the final, crucial puzzle piece they needed, the tangible link between Lachlan and the shell corporations that weren't traceable digitally. The extreme event was Serena's revelation. She innocently mentioned having a full, unedited backup of the foundation's records on her personal laptop, stored in the volunteer office. "I just keep everything organized," she confided. "The main office server is always kind of buggy, so I downloaded all the files, all the internal contracts, the donation receipts, everything, onto my computer this morning." This was it. The key to the entire operation was now sitting on an unsecured personal device, protected only by Serena's complete, misguided faith in her father. Aisha knew they had to move immediately to get the files, no matter the cost to her conscience. Aisha and Cassandra immediately shifted their focus. They had to get the files from Serena's laptop. The less extreme event was the tense, hushed argument between Aisha and Jian about the moral implications. Jian argued that Serena was an adult, a part of the machine, and her father's crimes made her fair game. Aisha countered, heartbroken, that Serena was a victim, too, albeit one wrapped in luxury. They compromised. They would use a highly specialized malware program developed by Jian that would quietly extract the files and delete itself, leaving no trace, ensuring Serena could maintain her total ignorance. The goal was to protect her while exposing her father. Cassandra, meanwhile, was preparing the digital attack from within Zenith Tech. She managed to create a small, fake maintenance window on the Foundation's digital records, a necessary distraction for Lachlan's security team. This bought Aisha the precious time she needed. Aisha, using the cover of a late-night volunteer, slipped into the Foundation's temporary office, easily finding Serena's laptop. She injected the malware, the process taking mere seconds. The program was fast and efficient, pulling all the internal contracts and financial agreements, including the specific paper trail linking the shell companies. Just as the progress bar on the file extraction hit 98%, the screen on Cassandra's monitoring station back at Zenith Tech flared red. The extreme event, the extraction program, despite Jian's best efforts, had tripped a silent, high-level security alert on Lachlan's main server. It wasn't a public alarm, but a direct, private notification to Lachlan himself. He instantly knew he had a sophisticated internal breach. Lachlan's response was swift and brutal. He didn't fire anyone. He didn't shout. He just subtly tightened his security protocols and focused his suspicion entirely on Cassandra, the only person who had access to the highest-level security data. Lachlan knew a double agent was in his midst. He decided to smoke them out, starting with the most vulnerable link. He called Cassandra into his office, his face calm and unreadable. He had already set a perfect trap. Cassandra walked into Lachlan's luxurious office, her heart hammering against her ribs. Lachlan, radiating false benevolence, gave her a key card. The less extreme event was his theatrical display of trust. "Cassandra, I'm promoting you. I need absolute loyalty now. This is a new office, just for you. Your job is to run a deep, covert audit on all our security logs. Find the leak." He gave her a location far from the main server room, a secluded, windowless office on the top floor. Cassandra knew instantly it was a test, a wire on a fishing line. She went to the new office, every nerve screaming. She ran a silent scan of the room, her fingers flying across her keyboard. She discovered the hidden flaw immediately. There was a tiny, perfectly concealed microcamera embedded in the ceiling tile, focused right on her desk. Lachlan was going to monitor her every move, waiting for her to make contact with Aisha. Cassandra remained outwardly calm, plugging in a decoy laptop and meticulously going through fake log files. The extreme event happened when she played her genius move. She used a background app to feed a pre-recorded loop of her working diligently into the camera's feed, allowing her to move freely while Lachlan watched a lie. With the camera neutralized, she began searching the room, trusting her instincts. The rug felt subtly raised in one corner. She pulled it back and found a heavy steel panel. Beneath it was a small, dusty, completely separate server rack, a hidden server that wasn't connected to the main Zenith Tech network. It was Lachlan's secret, physical hiding place, containing documents and files he never wanted digitized. She found a series of locked hard drives. Using a decades-old administrator code Jian had taught her, Cassandra bypassed the lock. The files that appeared were not digital copies, they were scans of original, physical documents, letters, internal bank memos, and handwritten notes detailing the entire $50 million scam, including the physical proof of the financial maneuverings and shell company creation. She knew this was the real treasure. Cassandra worked with frantic speed, copying the scanned, non-digital documents onto an encrypted stick. The less extreme event was the secure transfer to Aisha and Jian. Back in the motel room, the three collaborators were finally in possession of both the digital evidence, from the hacked server and Serena's laptop, and the physical evidence, the scanned paper trails from the secret server. They cross-referenced everything. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place, shocking even Jian. Tucked into the hidden files was a scanned document titled, Final Pension Approval. The signature authorizing the massive transfer of the $50 million pension fund was that of a mid-level manager who had died in a tragic accident years before the document was dated. It was undeniable, physical proof of forgery and premeditated fraud, the final, smoking gun. The crime wasn't a mistake, it was a deliberate act committed by using the identity of a dead man. Lachlan's arrogance was his downfall, he had archived his crime instead of destroying it. They realized this forgery document was too explosive to leak anonymously. They had to present it dramatically, at the gala, to ensure it couldn't be buried by Lachlan's expensive legal team. The plan solidified, public exposure at the height of his manufactured philanthropy. The extreme event occurred when, hours later, Lachlan received an anonymous, one-sentence text message on a private line, "Check the final pension approval document." Lachlan's face went white. He knew instantly what that document was. The forgery was the one secret he had convinced himself was completely safe. The breach was far deeper than he thought, and he knew Cassandra was the only person who could have found that physical document. He didn't move to fire her. Instead, he made an urgent, coded call to his chief legal counsel. "Begin preparations immediately," he commanded, his voice a low, chilling whisper. "I want a lawsuit ready to file against Zenith Tech itself. Flood the courts. Confuse the investigation. If I'm going down, the company's going down with me. The gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers glittered over a room full of the city's elite, the very people Lachlan Finch had spent years manipulating. But beneath the surface of silk and champagne, a war was being waged. Lachlan's legal team was already moving, flooding the courts with complex paperwork to confuse the impending investigation, a direct, extreme consequence of Aisha and Jian's actions. Lachlan had chosen chaos over surrender. He knew the exposure was coming, and he was ready to fight dirty. Meanwhile, in a cramped broadcast van parked 2 blocks away, Aisha, Jian, and Cassandra were meticulously preparing their presentation. This was the less extreme event, but it was tense and methodical. They assembled the video, marrying the undeniable proof, the forged signature, the wire transfer documents from the pension fund, and the financial chart of the money laundering scheme, with the deeply personal evidence, Lachlan's own voice on the audio recording from the restaurant, and his desperate, emotional letters to Serena. Aisha recorded her voiceover, speaking directly to the camera, explaining the details of the $50 million scam in both simple English and flawless Mandarin. The mix was deliberate, a final, powerful symbol of the two worlds Lachlan had tried to keep separate. Cassandra was the key to getting the video on the screen. She had found a backdoor access point in the venue's massive digital display system, originally set up for Lachlan's presentation. It was a one-time shot. If she failed, they would be instantly caught and silenced. As the clock ticked down, Cassandra received one final, alarming internal text message from an anonymous source, a major shareholder. Lachlan, knowing the room was full of potential enemies and investors, was planning an unprecedented, highly distracting surprise reveal during his speech. The extreme event, the surprise reveal, was not a charitable act, but the announcement of a massive, speculative stock buyback fueled by a new, risky loan. The news would temporarily skyrocket the company's stock, making the room full of investors rich and instantly overshadowing any talk of old, complicated fraud. He was preparing a financial shockwave to completely distract the public from his crimes. Their window of opportunity was shrinking fast. They had to interrupt him the moment he stepped onto the stage. Lachlan Finch took the stage, bathed in a spotlight that made him look like a hero. He began his speech with a theatrical dedication to his adopted daughter, Serena, who was standing beside him, beaming with pride. He spoke of kindness, of legacy, and of using wealth for good. The contrast between his manufactured image and the reality hidden in the motel room was sickening. The less extreme event was the crowd's rapt attention, the easy way they swallowed his lies, eager to believe in the success story. Serena's genuine admiration for her father only amplified the tragedy. Lachlan then moved to his grand, distracting surprise. He started explaining the mechanics of the stock buyback, his voice swelling with confidence, watching the delighted murmurs ripple through the powerful crowd. This was the moment. Cassandra, sweat pouring down her face in the remote van, hit the button. The extreme event was instantaneous and devastating. The massive screen behind Lachlan flickered, his PowerPoint presentation dissolving into static. Then, the screen exploded with the cold, hard, damning truth. The full-color financial flow chart of the money laundering scheme filled the screen, overlaid with bold text, "Pension fraud exposed, $50 million." Lachlan stopped mid-sentence, turning to stare at the screen, his polished composure dissolving into pure, animalistic shock. Aisha's calm voice, speaking in both English and Mandarin, flooded the ballroom through the venue's sound system. The voiceover meticulously detailed the forgery, showing the scanned image of the document with the dead employee's signature. The final, crushing blow came when the audio switched to the recording from the restaurant, Lachlan's arrogant, condescending voice demanding her manager fire her, followed by Aisha's perfect, rebuking Mandarin response, "That's not what it says." The room erupted into chaos. Investors screamed, phones flashed, and the media, who had been anticipating the surprise, were now in a feeding frenzy. The ballroom was instantly transformed into a scene of utter pandemonium, the shock of the investors quickly turning to savage fury. The extreme event continued as flashes from news cameras blinded Lachlan, who was standing frozen on the stage, exposed under the hot spotlight. His career, his reputation, and his life were unraveling in front of the world. The media descended like vultures, shouting questions about the forgery and the stolen pensions. The less extreme event was Lachlan's desperate reaction. He attempted to seize control, shouting denials into the microphone, his voice trembling with a rage that finally stripped away the false charm. "It's a lie. It's corporate espionage. That woman, Cassandra, she's a spy. She's trying to sabotage me." He pointed wildly into the crowd, hoping to deflect attention, throwing his loyal subordinate under the bus without a second thought. Cassandra, watching from the van, closed her eyes, knowing this was the price of justice. But her sacrifice was not in vain. Serena, however, was witnessing her father's complete moral collapse. She hadn't seen the financial charts, but she heard the raw, desperate hatred in his voice, the instant, callous betrayal of Cassandra, and the damning evidence of his voice from the restaurant. Her genuine, lifelong belief in him shattered like glass. She looked at her father, seeing not the benevolent CEO, but a monstrous liar consumed by panic and greed. The final extreme moment of the chapter occurred as police and federal agents, who had been discreetly waiting in the wings based on an earlier anonymous tip from Jian, moved in. They surrounded the stage. As the officers approached Lachlan, his face contorted in a final, ugly snarl of defiance. But before they could cuff him, Serena, her face drenched in silent tears, pushed through the crowd, not to her father, but running off the stage and out the emergency exit into the dark city night. She didn't look back, leaving Lachlan alone to face his fate. The arrest of Lachlan Finch dominated every news cycle. The investigation was swift and brutal. The mountain of digital and physical evidence provided by Aisha, Jian, and Cassandra was undeniable. The extreme event had settled into a legal reckoning. Lachlan was swiftly charged with fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. The less extreme event was the slow, difficult process of justice. Lachlan was denied bail, his assets were frozen, and he was forced to watch his empire collapse from behind bars. The victims of the pension scam, now vindicated, watched with tearful relief as their enemy was finally stripped of his power. Aisha and Jian met with the authorities, giving their statements, officially closing the book on their clandestine operation. Cassandra, granted full immunity for her cooperation, was hailed as a whistleblower and given a new role in a regulatory body. Their revenge was complete, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of justice served. But the story wasn't truly over until the most painful knot was untied. Serena, after days of silence, contacted Aisha. She agreed to meet at the jail, but she needed Aisha there for support. The extreme event was the jailhouse confrontation. Serena walked into the visitation room, her eyes swollen but firm, sitting opposite her father. She didn't ask about the money, she asked about the humanity. "Why, Dad? Why did you use my name? Why did you steal from people who trusted you?" Lachlan, stripped of his power, his custom suit replaced by a prison uniform, finally broke. The rage was gone, leaving only a hollow, pathetic shell. He confessed everything, the loneliness, the greed, the fear of failure, and how the initial scam snowballed into a monstrous habit. He confessed his cruelty to Aisha, the waitress, admitting he had targeted her because she reminded him of the life he tried to bury. He even admitted to using Serena's face because she represented the innocence he desperately wanted back. As he spoke, Serena's tears fell silently. She finally had the truth, but it cost her her family. Lachlan's full confession became the final nail in his coffin, ensuring a long prison sentence and the mandatory restitution of the $50 million he stole. The less extreme event was a quiet meeting between Aisha and Serena a few weeks later. They met at the Golden Palace, the restaurant where their two worlds had violently collided. Serena, dressed simply, was working as a volunteer, helping Mr. Chen manage the surge of media attention. They sat across from each other, two daughters of the same failed man, united by tragedy. Serena looked at Aisha, her eyes clear. "Thank you. It broke me, but it saved me." She revealed that she was selling the mansion and the luxury cars, all of which were legally purchased with clean funds separate from the scam. She wasn't keeping the tainted wealth. Instead, she was starting her own organization, a Real Foundation, dedicated to helping employees recover from corporate fraud, and she wanted Aisha and Jian to be her first advisors. Kindness, she said, was the only way to fight the darkness her father created. The final twist, the extreme event that brought the revenge full circle, came when Serena handed Aisha a sealed envelope. "My mom sent this. She's divorcing him. She wanted you to know the whole truth." The letter revealed that Serena's adopted mother, Lachlan's wife, was the one who saw Lachlan's increasing paranoia. She wasn't just his wife, she was Naomi's estranged college friend. She had secretly observed Lachlan setting his trap and made the anonymous call to Jian to warn him just enough, initiating the chain reaction that allowed them to escape and expose him. She had been the final, hidden instrument of his destruction. Aisha looked at Serena, then at the letter. The fight was over. Lachlan was gone, his empire reduced to dust. But in its place, a new family had formed, one of two half-sisters, an adopted father figure, and a network of justice built on empathy and courage. The final message was clear: betrayal hurts, but the choice to use that pain to build kindness is the ultimate victory. This incredible journey of revenge, heartbreak, and unexpected family shows that sometimes, the simplest truth spoken with the purest intention is the most powerful weapon in the world. If this story made you gasp, cheer, or even shed a tear, hit the like button and subscribe. Tell us in the comments what you would have done if you were Aisha.